It's time for more Manifesting Original Rich Bitch Experiences. I'm your host, Ava Beilke. Welcome back to the More Pod. I hope you are doing well. I am so excited. We have such a treat on today's episode. We are joined by Natalia Benson. She's an astrologer, money mentor, and medium living in Southern California. By fusing the spiritual world with practical tools for empowerment, Natalia has helped thousands of students and clients make meaningful choices and change their lives. Natalia specializes in money mentorship, digital course creation, and online monetization rooted in astrology, personal finance, and spiritual wellness. She has her own money membership, 6 years running, and is the host of Natalia Benson, the podcast, an astrology, money, and entrepreneurship-based podcast, which hit over 1.5 million downloads with the last episode, which is incredible. Natalia's mission is to equip women with the power to create life on their terms thanks to the unique fusing of financial awareness, astrology, and spirituality. She is currently training and practicing to become a medium. Natalia Benson, welcome to the More Pod.
Oh my God, what an honor. Thanks for having me, babe.
Thanks for being here.
So excited.
I'm so excited. And in reading through your bio, I'm like, I just feel so lucky to know you.
Oh, babe.
Seriously.
I'm like emotional today.
Okay.
So if I have
Trigger
tears with my
warning.
Aquarius, just don't worry. It's just water that comes out of your eyes.
I'm like, what are those exactly?
It's just water that comes out of your eyes when
Okay.
you feel big emotions.
Thank you. I mean, I'd be a little like, what are those? I've actually been more of a crier lately, which
Really?
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear more about
I know.
this.
We'll see if I cry today.
Okay, let's see what happens.
But I'm so glad you're here. You and I initially connected almost 4 years ago.
Yeah, you're right.
And I connected with you when I was on my entrepreneurial journey. I had just left corporate, 10 years running, and I was totally freaked out because I'm like, how do I make money? And your money membership, honestly, was just the most beautiful foundation for my business. And here we are several years later. And I think, not only the money, but you've always been so inspiring because you have all of these tools. You have all of these skills that you've mastered, whether it's astrology, money, business coaching, like even DJing. I'm like, she is so cool. And I think it's really empowering because I feel like the message we get time and time again is like niche down, be one thing, like figure out your lane and just stick to it. And it's like, as humans, we are so multifaceted.
Yes.
And I just love that you have been able to blend all of these things into your business.
Oh, thanks, babes.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful reflection.
It is. And there's one more thing that you're now adding to your business, which is mediumship.
Yes. And it's like my favorite thing to talk about. Like, honestly, like I even had a moment recently where astrology is like my first love and will always be a part of my life. It will always be a part of my work. But now it's like, and like, your human design. I don't know if you babes talk about this on the pod much,
we do.
but yeah, like being a manifesting generator, like I'm here to like fuse lots of different things, and adding in the mediumship, I can just tell that it's so a part of my path because it just lights me up. My self-diagnosed ADHD goes away. Like I'm just so like lit up by it.
Yeah.
And like astrology sometimes now I can feel my sacral just be like contract a bit because like I know my being and my body is like letting me know that there's like a new really important focus for me. And I'm still in such surrender of what the heck that will look like. But yes, it's such an absolute privilege to be practicing and learning more about how to be like a really, really clear channel as a medium. And I love it so much. It's like made my life so meaningful.
I'm so excited to like ask you all about it.
Yes.
And I'm glad to hear that you've got, and I think we have these cycles too of like, we've done this thing for so long and we'll always love it. But it's like, we have to be like continuing to add in newness to feel lit up in certain ways.
Totally.
I'm really interested in the idea of how we can connect to the other side to be more aligned in our daily lives, because I'm all about, sharing the things that make me feel more me. And then listeners can find a new tool, a new hobby, a new methodology to just help them feel more embodied. Before we dig into my questions about mediumship, I want to just start with like a baseline, a definition. Like, how would you describe mediumship for the purposes of today?
Yeah, I love that, babe. So, I mean, really simply, the way that I see mediumship is essentially you are an intermediary between the seen physical world, which is and this is not a derogatory, but a lower vibration. You are an intermediary. You are a medium between the very earthly, seen, lower, heavier vibration realm. Because if, like, you think about it, you can see it, you can touch it. It's real, so to speak. A medium essentially is the conversation starter between this realm and then the unseen realm. And one of the deepest gifts of mediumship is really just reminding us that there is continuation after physical death. So after we are complete with this physical journey and physical incarnation, this is the reminder that, like, we do go on, that we do have a soul, that we are a part of source energy. And it's an absolute fascinating topic because, of course, it brings so many things into the fore of, like, depending on like spiritual beliefs, religious beliefs, like what we are told, which is that death is this finality, and what mediumship really challenges, although it is an absolutely magnificently beautiful heart-led practice, it really just reminds that like there is more. And I think mediums really have the propensity to like strengthen our sense of confidence and our sense of peace, because I'd say pretty much every single one of us on this earth, no matter how much we understand about the other side or we've had a metaphysical or paranormal experience, we still fear death because it is, the completion of the ego and of our time as these individual selves. But very, very simply, a medium is the intermediary between the seen and the unseen world. And our role, and the truth is that everyone is a medium. How attuned are you is really the question. How open are you to that communication? But everyone has the ability to have that level of communication. And I always remind someone that when I sit down to do a practice session with them, I remind them that whether I bring their loved one through or not and bring through evidence or not, that they have a direct line of communication at all times. And so it's also very empowering as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, the empowered approach. Like, you don't need somebody to help you do that. Although sometimes, arguably, I'm like, no, I do need help.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
It makes me truthfully believe it so much more because I just lost my dad, about 6-7 months ago. And I've gone to multiple mediums to communicate with him. And it has been healing for me because even though I've had my own direct experiences of him letting me know he's still around and alive, just in another way, nothing like for my brain proves it more powerfully than someone that does not know who I am telling me deep details and evidential details that nobody could know. So there really is such a gift in it in that.
The proof points, the evidential details. I'm like, we love those. And you're like, don't tell me anything.
Yeah, I'm like, do not tell me a name. Like, I should have told you that before.
Like, let me tell you everything. No. That is so interesting. I like how you mentioned that we all have this sort of ability, because one of the questions I was reflecting on was, I often say, like, we're all intuitive, but I was like, are we all psychic? Like, is there a scale of that clarity and like how we are all able to tap in?
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, yes. Like, and the only reason I say that is because human beings, we all have like an intuitive, instinctual system. This is very primal, right? It's like the way in which our bodies were made to sense predators, or just like, I'm definitely not an expert in any sort of like biological human evolution, but I'm always very fascinated by stuff like this. So we all have a level of intuition and instinct that's just inherent in being human. There's a popular saying, as I've been learning mediumship, that all mediums are psychic, but not all psychics are mediums. So mediums and the practice of mediumship, you do have psychic ability and you tap into your clairs. So like clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. And it's what I found in doing my practice sessions over the last year and a half, is that different souls will communicate through different clairs. So some will communicate very clearly through clairaudience, some through clairvoyance, some a mix of everything. But very simply, we all have access to those clairs. And in terms of like, my personal reflection on mediumship is I call it an ability more than a gift. I do think that there are absolutely people like Tyler Henry and Thomas John and Teresa Caputo who just out the gate when they were young had very, very strong psychic experiences. But what I would say, and this is, in very Aries fashion of me, I believe that it is an ability that we can cultivate. I recorded a special, I call it an audio experience because it's not a book. It's way too casual to be a book. But I just recorded my own audio experience around how I see mediumship and how I see it as an ability, because I didn't begin to tap into this until I was about 36 and I just stumbled into it. So I definitely had some interesting experiences when I was younger, but I was never like communicating or having anything go on like that. And I think some people will say, oh, I'm not intuitive, or I'm not psychic, or I could never be a medium. But the truth is you don't know until you attempt to practice the ability. And it's like a learned skill is the way that I see it. But I do believe it's something we can all tap into, but you definitely have to want to.
Yeah. And I have some questions about that later.
Yes, I'm excited about that one.
Do we want to?
Yes, exactly.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, you kind of just casually mentioned that you stumbled into this, but I'm curious how you recognize that you have these abilities, or really what piqued your interest in honing these abilities.
Yeah. So, back in 2023, so it's actually so beautiful that you brought up the business mentoring, because I had a really powerful experience. I was just really burning myself out, like, to put it softly. Yeah. I was working so much and I was doing a lot of business mentoring because it's something, especially with the Capricorn energy in my chart, it's definitely something I have a natural affinity towards. And I love helping powerful heart-led women make money. It's just like my favorite thing ever, and really step into their potential. And I had an interesting experience. So I had signed on a new business mentoring client, even though I knew I didn't really want to do it anymore, but it was stability and it just made sense. It made financial sense for me to keep doing it. And I remember one day she got on the phone with me and she was just like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm closing down my business. And I looked at her and I was like, okay, so that means like she was going to cancel her whole jaunt with me over the next like 3 to 6 months. And I got off that call with her and I was like, totally fine. I understand. Like, if you don't have a business, there's no reason for us to do this. And I just started to cry because I felt very defeated. I knew that that was like a bit of a sign and a signal for me to start to listen to myself a bit deeper. And I was also scared. Like, again, that was really my whole focus. And it was kind of all I knew, or not so much all I knew, but it was a really big focus in the business. And it had been for a couple of years. But I remember getting off that call and just weeping at my desk. And I started talking out loud. And I was like, it's funny to recall this, but I just said out loud, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. You need to tell me what I'm doing. I just started saying, like, you need to tell me what I'm doing. I didn't know who I was talking to. I didn't know I was talking to spirit guides. I didn't even necessarily look at stuff like that. I didn't think about ancestors. I didn't think about my spiritual team. I didn't think about stuff like that. Like, people assume just because I'm like spiritual or esoteric that I had this whole vernacular. But the truth is, like, I just didn't. And I didn't think that way. But I just started saying over and over, you need need to tell me what to do. You need to tell me what to do. And I got quiet, and then I heard this voice very, very softly in my head say, oh, we'll tell you what to do. And I stopped crying, and I was like, okay. And the next morning, I actually got an email that was from Ainsley McLeod's team. So he was on Ellen DeGeneres, Oprah, Two Powerful Aquarians. He's a past life psychic, so very, very well known. I was on his wait list for 3 years, from 2020 to 2023. And the next morning I had an email saying that he could see me on Monday afternoon. And I was like, okay, is this part of the tell you what to do?
Yeah.
And without going too deep into the details, I essentially had an extremely, extremely life-changing reading with him, which actually then led me to have an extreme physical effect. And I ended up in the emergency room.
Oh, wow.
And this was because I was living in such unbelievably wounded masculine. Like, I was literally working myself to the bone, borderline abusing my body, because I was just like dysmorphic. I struggled with body dysmorphia really my whole life. So I'd work out in extremes. I would eat in extremes. I was just also so disassociated from my body. So it was kind of like this perfect storm all at once, getting me to heal and let go of this hyper masculine programming that was like, everything is on me. I have no support in this universe. No one's going to take care of me but me. And going through this process, especially getting peeled out of my bed by paramedics with EKGs on my heart. I mean, I thought I was dying. I thought that I was I basically, long story short, it's a little bit odd, but I had gotten an IV, and they dosed me with glutathione straight into my vein. You're supposed to administer it over 3 minutes. He did it in about 30 seconds. So basically what I later figured out was that my body, my liver just unloaded every toxin that was in it all at once.
Oh, wow.
So I thought I was dying, and in a way I kind of was. I went through this hyper detox, and I was so scared that I ended up in the emergency room. After that couple days, I cried for 3 days straight. I was literally having, as funny as it sounds, I was having some form of an ego death, and it needed to like physically purge out of me. So after that, I just got quiet. I actually got sick for the first time in 3 years. I used to never let myself get sick because I was like, everything's on me. I can't slow down. And once after, when I was sick and I was laying in bed, I was like, I'm going to watch Tyler Henry. So I started obsessively watching Tyler Henry, Hollywood Medium. And I heard that voice again, mediumship, get a book on it. Like they're very quippy, my guides. And I was like, okay, get a book. I was like, okay. So I ordered a book called Magical Mediumship by Danielle Dion. And I'll never forget the first night I started reading it, because I knew it was part of my path. It's exactly how I felt when I found astrology and tarot and even electronic music and all the things I've done. I just knew it was part of the journey. But very hilariously, I started reading the book, and it was like nighttime, and I used to be terrified of scary movies, terrified of the other side. I never communicated with anything that I couldn't see right in front of me. And I just remember opening the book, and it was like, how to begin communicating with the dead. And I go, can we call it something else? Like, can we name it something else? And I literally read 2 pages and closed it. And I was married at the time, so I would like only read it when like my husband was in bed with me. But over time, I just got less afraid the more that I essentially educated myself on what the other side actually is and how it works, and how sovereign we also are, like as human beings, which is another gift of mediumship. And what it reminds you is how powerful you are, how sovereign you are, especially being physically incarnated. So that's the short version of that story. That's the shortest version I could give you.
Well, I love that.
It was just like I had to go through a bit of a physical it was intense. And that was just the beginning, honestly.
Well, it's so fascinating because, you know, I've read a lot about how emotions and physicality, like it's all connected, you know, mind, body, spirit. And it's like you had that huge physical detox because you're like, something else is coming.
Yes.
But also like, I think it's interesting. You didn't say this, but at all those points, you knew when to tap in and listen to something, even if it was like, you're like, who? What?
Literally, yes.
Where?
Yes.
Where?
Yes.
Get a book? And it's like, I think that's such an interesting like lesson in learning to just trust yourself through time, because it's like when you do get those pangs about, money or mediumship or whatever it is,
listen.
It's so easy to be like, that makes no sense. And you just like override those messages.
Yes.
But when you listen,
that's the magic.
That's the magic.
That's how my whole life has unfolded, like listening to those things. And I think we go to our programming so easily, myself included, of just, like you said, like not listening, because the way the other side communicates, especially our spiritual team, it's very subtle. And you got to ask oftentimes, because we have, especially in this, from what I understand about Earth, it's deeply free will oriented. So, which is good to remember. And we do have to ask. Sometimes they will intercede if it's like a true, intense, like you're literally about to veer off, but it's a bit rare that happens, but they will intercede in serious cases. But so often we have to ask, and asking is part of the magic, and them being willing to receive the guidance. So yeah, that's definitely been a really big part of my life.
Okay, the listening and the asking.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I remember listening to that podcast you did with Ansley. And it was a couple years ago, so I don't remember the specifics, but it was incredible. And I think that's just so nice that was kind of like one of those moments where you're like, something's shifting here.
And talking to him is like, he's very special. I think he's a Pisces. He might be like a triple Pisces or something, but he is like, his wife describes him as loosely tethered to the physical plane. Like he is he's very grounded. He's a very grounded spiritual person, but he's just like so freaking tapped in. Like it's really special. And that really was the beginning for me of like understanding there was more. Because I asked for guidance that day, and then I really got it mostly through that session. And then all the ways my life sort of unraveled and has unraveled over the last 2 years.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I know that you mentioned this briefly, that you used to be terrified of the other side. You said that in one of your recent podcasts.
Yes.
And essentially being afraid of the unseen world, I think, is a very common experience.
Yeah.
Especially in like Western society, like we don't really have like celebration of death. Like we don't really treat it like other cultures. And so it is scary and it is unseen for a lot of people. How do you feel about death now?
Yeah. I mean, well, first, like, death, it's not something I necessarily welcome, because I love living, and I really trust that I'm meant to be here for a long life this time around. But I will say that one of the things that has helped me not only develop as a medium, but also feel less afraid of loss is watching near-death experiences and watching people who have actually died, clinically died, and come back to then communicate about what they experience of the other side. Wow. And I actually just on my podcast, I had these two twin brothers, Elliot and Jesse. They just came on to talk about NDEs, and they basically have this brilliant, cinematically stunning NDE channel on YouTube, and they're just growing in droves right now, because I just think this is such a topic that people get so scared of. And so when you actually hear how people have passed away, clinically dead, and then come back and can actually tell you their experience, and it's profound. And that's helped me a lot. And then in terms of just like the fear of the other side, I even remember Leo Max doing a session with me. He's now become one of my dearest friends, and he's one of my healers, and he's a hypnotherapist. And it was so funny because the first time I ever did a session with him was back in, I think, 2021. And I just told him, I said, I'm afraid of the other side. I never talked to it. And he goes, oh, why do you have such strong boundaries with the other side? But it's also because I think in Western culture, and this is something I talked about in my audio experiences, I think we're giving this really interesting binary that's like, you either can have religion and like angels and demons and like this sort of unseen relationship and God and all this stuff, or you can have like scary movies, which is like terrifying. And I've seen 2 scary movies in my whole life.
Yeah, I haven't.
Not my thing.
Me neither.
Don't need to throw my nervous system in that kind of, gnarliness, especially doing this now.
Yeah.
But we're not really given much breadth between. And I think for people who are maybe not religious, and then for people who don't like scary movies, it's like then we find kind of this interesting melding in, like, I'll just say specifically like New Age spirituality, which definitely gives you more of this open interpretation of existence and how the other side works, the fact that we have a soul. And I will say for myself, NDEs and watching, hundreds of mediumship sessions at this point, it just teaches you that there is no loss. So I have been like reprogramming my brain around how I view death, loss, and even grief, even though I am grieving right now, losing my dad. So I have my human days where my grief is strong and I miss my dad and I want him here. And then I'm grateful for the gift of just the awareness of my soul and just everything that I've learned that reminds me that there is life beyond life. So that's sort of been a little bit of my own self-induced crash course, so to speak, because I used to be terrified of the other side and terrified of loss and death. Those were like huge, huge things for me.
Yeah. So it sounds like just exposing yourself to it, but then also listening to people who have had these experiences and can actually maybe demystify like some of that like unknown. Because I think, at least for me, I think a lot of the fear comes from just like having no clue. Like unknown is just the trigger.
Absolutely.
Unknown equals fear. So as you listen to more people talk about it, it would make sense that you're like, oh, like there's actually, you can find lots of things on the other side.
Yes.
And it is interesting too, like like I did not grow up religiously.
Yeah, me neither.
And so like my spirituality has been something I've picked up and gained, like independently. And I think that's also an interesting experience because I've got like atheist family members like, what do you mean? Like you're talking to grandpa, you know what I mean? Like there's just so many like levels of belief and disbelief and like, but I think the more you listen and the more you hear people's experiences, it would make sense that it would be less scary.
Yes. And another book that I'd be amiss to not mention is Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton, and Destiny of Souls is the secondary book he made after Journey of Souls, or he wrote after Journey of Souls. But he was like a traditionally trained, I believe like psychotherapist, psychologist who used hypnosis. And he just stumbled upon like taking people into their super conscious minds and just did thousands and thousands of case studies and was essentially able to write these books that just speak about the absolute, it's essentially like the multiverse of the soul. And so I'd say for anyone who is afraid of death or maybe is grieving, I also always recommend that book for people in grief if they want a more spiritual approach to maybe any other grief healing that they're doing. Because the Journey of Souls specifically, I've read that book 2-3 times. Like it's just such a profound book, and I find it extremely healing.
That's good to know. I'm making notes on
I
that.
know, right?
Yeah.
I'm like the book recommender.
You are.
That's
you
like
really
my
are.
thing.
I know. And you always recommend good ones.
Good. That's like my Gemini energy in my chart. I'm like, here's a book. Here's a podcast.
I love it. The more info, the better.
Right.
So, okay. This is so good. I'm so fascinated. I want to ask you about your experience tapping into different energies. And I assume there's a lot, like you never really know what you're going to get.
No, you always know.
You always know.
Always. Your intent, my intentionality being a medium, I am very clear about who I'm talking to. Okay. And I work with my team to ensure that whomever is being brought in, it's very specific. Because I think that's an important thing to remember. And I think that's kind of what scary movies and even religion to a degree just want us to believe, is that you can just be overtaken at any moment. And that's just not how it works. And it's also so much based on your vibrational frequency, your health as a human being. All of these things are very, very important. But when I go in, it's more so, a lot of times what I'll have someone do is I'll have them tell me 3 first names so we can get as specific as possible. And before I begin a session, I talk to my team, I talk to my dad, I talk to my late mentor, his name is David, and I literally tell them exactly what I would like and exactly what I require.
Okay.
And that's helpful. You can be very specific. And then also, channeling is a little bit more where you can get some wayward, interesting stuff.
Okay.
But mediumship, just again, from my experience, very, very specific. Channeling is kind of like tuning a radio station. You're like, okay, where are we going?
Yeah.
And you see what you can attune to. But in mediumship, and especially the way I've been learning and practicing, you're very specific.
Okay.
Especially with whomever you have in front of you or whoever you're going to be reading for.
Okay. So it sounds like a much more boundaried kind of structured approach.
Yeah. I mean, from my experience, yes. Because believe me, beginning this, I was like, it sounds frightening. But then as I've, again, educated myself and learned so much, it's just it's really not. It's so love-filled.
Okay.
So love-filled.
Love-filled.
Don't we love that?
Yes. Well, see, here's the thing. A little bit selfishly, I was curious about how you protect yourself if there is unwanted energy, whether it be neutral or negative. Because I've heard you talk about positive, neutral, and maybe sometimes negative energies. And I ask it because I had a paranormal experience last summer that scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And it was something that I didn't think I was calling in.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I just felt like I was so out of control. My crystals, my tools that I'm I just felt like weren't helping. And so that's kind of the curiosity around how to remain boundaried if you encounter.
Yeah. What can I ask what happened or what you were doing?
I was in New Orleans.
Yeah, girl. Well, that's number one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of intense spiritual energy there.
A lot
of old energy too.
A lot of energy. And I was at this boutique hotel.
Yeah.
And it was, 100 years old. I read later the history of the hotel.
Yes.
It was which was clearly scrubbed from the internet, changed names. But essentially, I encountered I didn't sleep for 3 nights, basically.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I was in this room, and I had physical bed rocking.
Yes, totally.
And found out later that there had been maybe a sailor that used to live there, and it was an apartment.
Yes.
And so it kind of started to make sense afterwards, but I was so scared because
it's terrifying.
It was my first. I've always believed in the unseen, but it was my first physical experience encountering that.
Yes.
And I just felt so unprepared.
Yeah, totally. Well, and here's the thing, this is kind of my silly, cute joke. I only stay in new places for a reason.
Yeah, right.
I just do. I'm sensitive to spaces. And here's the thing, understanding the spirit, the human spirit, the human soul. So I actually had a client many, many, many years ago. And see, this is the attribution that people typically make if you talk about mediumship, because yes, we are communicating with the dead, but it's a little different only because to communicate with a wayward spirit, that's more, I'd say, ghost hunting. Ooh. That's more people who are just they're going to attune to lower realms. And again, this isn't negative. This is just lower vibrational realms.
Yeah.
Because what can happen, and Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls taught me this, is that sometimes when a soul has passed and it's a young soul, they'll just get stuck. They don't know, or maybe their family came to greet them or their guide came and they're like, no, especially traumatic deaths. And I had a client many, many, many years ago who was living in New Orleans and had the exact same experience, because especially Hurricane Katrina, there's a lot of souls that departed probably very, very traumatically. And so we have to remember that there can be heightened energy of place.
Yeah.
So you can walk into a space and that soul, necessarily there's no malice. It's just they're getting your attention, because the way also that they see us when they're disembodied and we're embodied, they just see energy and light and photons like emitting. And essentially the idea from, again, what I've studied, what I've read, is that they're just trying to get our attention. So it doesn't necessarily have to be malice. Of course, it can be, but not necessarily. And I think that's a good thing to remember is like, yeah, if you step into an old place, there is likely going to be spiritual energy there, because a lot of people have died. And a lot of times souls, they don't know where to go. But again, I would say, babe, also to help with that and maybe to metabolize some of that too. Destiny of Souls is amazing.
Okay.
Because he talks about multiple case studies of like hauntings, but what they actually are. And I mean, I'm just like the Disneyland of like everything spiritual, because I'm just like, there's always some form of understanding when you take a higher perspective.
Yeah.
And it makes all of it a little bit less frightening.
Yeah.
But it's just like when you're walking around at night. When I used to live in Hollywood, I didn't go walking around at 1 a.m. for a reason, because there's going to be, who knows what I'm going to run into. And so we can also do the same with the way that places we stay or the way that we care for ourselves. But if you step into a really old place, it's likely. My mom was just there and she goes, you would not have you would not like it. And I go, no, I have to be honest, I'll probably never go there. Yeah. It's just not, I just know myself enough that it's just not really my thing, because I am so sensitive and I know I would I wouldn't be sleeping for 3 nights either.
No, that would be, I can imagine it'd feel quite overwhelming.
I had a paranormal experience a long time ago when I was partying. I went and stayed at this house with all my party friends. I was probably about 23 years old, and I woke up in the middle of the night. It was the one night that I didn't like use drugs. I was like just drinking all the time, and I was partying, doing drugs a lot. And I remember I woke up in this house. We had like just had wine and had dinner, and everyone was partying in the room. And then a bunch of us were sleeping in this side room. And that was the first time I ever experienced like sleep paralysis, where where like a being was, anchoring me down, and I was in a dream state, couldn't get out of it. And this might sound really crazy, but when I came out of it the next day, it made me think so differently about the chapter of life I was in, because the message that I metabolized, even though, yes, I was soulful then, but I definitely wasn't practicing or embodied with my spirituality whatsoever, especially in a healthy way. But I remember once I left the house, I had this message come through that was like, this being was reminding you that you're alive and it isn't, and you're squandering your life. You're squandering your life force. And I remember just feeling like I had survived something really intense, but it really made me think differently, even though it was a textbook, very frightening experience. And later on, I met someone whose family owned the house, and they said, oh yeah, that house is so haunted, but it only shows to women, because none of the men had ever experienced anything, but the women in the family had. And then of course, I did, but that was the message that I really received and took from that. And it just woke me up. And that's another thing, even from lower vibrations, you just have to know that like you're still safe. It's just unpleasant because it scares the shit out of our ego to have experiences with the unseen. Yeah. And I would just say, like I said, that autoge of like not walking around like Hollywood at 1, 2 in the morning on a Tuesday. It's like, just you can be specific about where you stay too.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
I hope that makes you feel a little better.
It does. I think it's interesting to use the term like metabolize the experience, because I'm like, I actually don't know that I have, in the sense that I'm like, that happened. That was weird. It scared the shit out of me, but I don't quite like.
Know where to place it. And a lot of people don't, because again, it's like, that's again why I like have made myself study this stuff, because I'm like, I don't want to be scared. Of course, if I experienced it the way you did, I would be scared. And I have had stuff like that happen. But again, it's like to state your boundary.
Yeah.
They also have to listen.
Yeah.
And did you ever speak out loud?
On night 2, yeah, I was like texting. I should have texted you.
You should have texted me,
I didn't know you were studying mediumship at the time. I was like, what do I do? And they're like, say that you need to get sleep for the night, but you can talk in the morning. You know what I mean? Like, so I tried a couple things.
You can tell them to communicate in your dream state. That's usually what I'll do if I feel energies. I'll be like, hey, clearing out, I'm going to sleep. You are not to disturb me. But if you would like to communicate with me, you may peacefully do so in my dream state. And you can talk to them.
Okay.
Yeah, they hear us. I mean, they were also once human.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to, here's the thing too, and this is more of a Leo Max conversation, so you might need to have him on at some point. But again, like just a note about like mediumship, my deep intention with mediumship, and I say it every time before I begin, is that I am only speaking with those embodied in love, pure love and pure light frequency, whatever is of source energy and whatever will be healing for the person sitting across from me. And so that's a vibrational thing too, because if you have like wayward energy or stuff like this, they cannot penetrate that, because also it's, you know, this is where you get into like I used to love Disney movies, and it's like we see like Fantasia and like sorceresses and wizards and like all these different things, but it's like really all of that stuff and magic is just about how you use your word and intention. And that's a part of mediumship. And also I think it's just a great tool in general for our lives, living with more intention and stating what we're available for, both to people in the seen and the unseen space. So
that's so fascinating. I think I have yet to tap into like verbalizing and talking out loud and kind of stating. And I think that will probably be my next like personal step in the journey of just, you know, understanding that there's more on the other side.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just so interesting because, you know, you go about your day and you're doing 100 human things. And then you're like, oh, wait, I could also dabble over here, you know?
Yes.
So I think
the gift.
That's the gift. When you mentioned your team of spirit guides a couple of times, and I'm a bit familiar with this concept of like, we have a team of people or energies, spirits that help guide our daily lives. I'm curious to know, is this something that we all kind of have built in? Is it by selection where we decide to accumulate a team? And then after that, what are some examples of just messages that our teams might be sending us that we're like totally missing on a daily basis?
Oh, I love that. I mean, so first part is, do we have team by selection?
Yeah.
Well, everyone has a spiritual team.
Okay.
Everyone. That's how magnificent you are. And we forget. I mean, if we could only understand like the love that exists on the other side of the veil for us, it's the way that I've heard it described multiple times is like we are like star athletes to incarnate on this physical plane of Earth. Earth is intense. Like look around, look at the things that go on in history, even and now. It's an intense place. It's an intense place of dichotomy and contrast. And they say that it's one of the most intense places to physically incarnate because the veil is so thick, and forgetting what you are is part of the agreement to come here. I heard an NDE, actually it was a pre-birth, they're not obviously called a near-death experience if it's a pre-birth planning, but sometimes people will go into like spontaneous recall of like planning with their team coming here, whether that's in an NDE or I've seen multiple renditions of people who have these like spontaneous recalls, whether when they're young or they're older. And I remember there was this woman, and she said that she was going through her pre-birth planning and what happened. And she said something so profound. She said as she's planning her life with her guides and setting up the things she were to experience and grow through in that life, that her guides said something to her. And they said, listen, if you need us, just call us. And as soon as I heard that, it always gives me chills because it's just like that reminder. It's like, you can always talk to us. And we all, there are so many beautiful like books and YouTubes, books specifically, like Sonia Choquette talks about this a lot, like how to really get to know your unique spiritual team. And if you start to ask for them to reveal themselves in your lives, meditation is like one of the greatest tools. And here's the thing, when people say, I'm not good at meditating, number one, it's not something to be good at. Meditation is a practice and it gets easier the more that you do it. Just like working out. It's like you could lift 5 pounds your first year of working out and then be lifting 50 pounds in your fifth year of working out. It's like you get stronger the more that you do it. And so what is so beautiful about our spiritual team is, number one, everyone has one. And these are beings who, from what I understand, they have incarnated and they've been human and they've essentially incarnated out of the incarnation cycle, where if we're here, we're in the incarnation cycle and every single journey is just an opportunity to grow. And that's why I love astrology, because astrology helps us understand a bit of planning of what the frick we're doing here and how to like grow as much as we can while we're here, both with the ease and with the challenge. But what I would say is, like, if you're looking for signs from your guides or you want to have a stronger connection, I remember when this really came online for me over the last couple of years, meditation is what has helped that the most. I actually, the first time I ever contacted and really got a message from my guide was doing a Suzanne Giesemann mediumship meditation. So she's actually a teacher I found on YouTube when I wanted to get deeper into mediumship. And she just has these like free workshops on YouTube. So I essentially just started to listen to one of her workshops, and she's like, okay, well, let's do a meditation to contact your head guide. And I had gotten information like maybe 15 years earlier. I was like out in LA at something. And this girl said she was channeling my guide, and she's like, oh, your guide's like a male energy. And that's come up actually a lot through different sort of readings and whatnot. So then when I did this meditation, I had contact. He told me his name was Chloe. And I was like, okay. And then he said, we're going to send you, she said, ask your guide for a sign. And I know butterflies are so in now, but for me, like, butterflies were not in my frame of consciousness.
They weren't trendy then.
They weren't trending in my world. So I remember seeing this kind of like illustrated butterfly, which I actually ended up getting tattooed on my hand. Cute. But I just remember seeing this very specific sort of illustration of a butterfly. And then I remember the message that came through, I'll never forget it, is Chloe essentially said, you are safe. And there was something about the way this was said. I wept, I blubbered. It hit me so deeply because safety has just always been a thing for me. It's funny, I feel more safe now than I ever have, but it's really been a tough one for me in this life to feel authentically safe in all different ways. So when that message came through, and it was just, again, it sort of bypasses, especially when you do a guided meditation and you can get past some of your logical thinking and all the control that your frontal lobe wants to have. And you start to actually receive impressions and receive messages that don't feel like they're just originating from your thinking brain. You feel it viscerally. And typically it will come with a great deal of emotion because your soul is touching and remembering something. So that's, that sort of story, I suppose, could be a wonderful way for someone to like explore YouTube, be mindful with what you find like a credible teacher or meditations on Insight Timer. But there are ways, there's just a plethora of opportunities to connect to your guide, to ask them for inspiration, information, but you gotta let yourself believe. It's kind of like letting the imagination, like open. And that's another big thing with mediumship too, is you can't let your left brain talk you out of everything. And a lot of us are just very used to like being hyper logical and hyper attuned to our frontal lobe, which makes sense. I mean, it's part of being human, and it's okay. Like, we're human. We need to be human. It's part of why the soul incarnates, to have the human journey. But to spiritually connect and to like remember who we are and what we have access to, like, you gotta open a little bit and connect more to the right brain.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's definitely,
especially my Aquarian queen.
I know. I'm like,
so strong there.
Yes. No, that's a great point. And it is sort of like a prerequisite, if you will, I suppose, to everything we're talking about, because it's not your practical, logical daily information. It's so different, and it's almost like you have to just be like, it's like trusting those little, you're like, oh, somebody said buy this book, and you're like, cool. But it's just that openness that, and I feel like personally, as I've opened more, maybe not a ton, but like definitely within the last probably 5 years, I feel like I've just been on a journey 360, but being open to the possibility of more, and like unseen, and like not logical. It's
same.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun, honestly.
It is. It's magical.
It's
truly,
magical.
Truly.
Like, life gets so much better because you're like, oh, there's more. It feels like even back to this idea of like, we all have a team of guides. It's like, if you let yourself open up to that, you aren't alone. And it doesn't have to feel like, back to your like, I'm doing everything for myself, like it's all me, like carrying this like big burden. It's like, if we just ask for help more often, like, what could we feel like?
Oh yeah. I mean, is that a rhetorical question? Or
It's just rhetorical. Like,
it's just so beautiful. It's such a, I know that people sometimes they don't like the conversation around masculine, feminine energy, because they think it gets so gendered. But I think we're missing on such richness if we don't talk about masculine, feminine polarity. And again, maybe not so much to do with gender, but to do with energy. All of existence is a play of this. Especially, ancient cultures and religions, everything is the interplay between these energies. And, I will say, like, for myself specifically, healing my relationship to my feminine is what this whole journey for me has been about. Because to have a relationship to feminine energy, that is your receptive energy. And I believe that's where the soul mostly exists, is in that receptive field of energy. And if for me specifically, where like I was in that narrative of like, it's all on me, no one, not even like a source, God energy, whatever you want to call it, is there for me. Well, that had me over functioning, doing everything myself. And that's how a lot of people get, sick in any way, whether it's mentally, physically, energetically, emotionally, because we're so over functioning, and we forget that we do have support. And I think that is the gift for many people around religion and belief systems, is because it gives you a system to tap into faith. So that's fine. Like, if it helps you do that, then it's a gift. But for many of us, and I think our generation specifically, we've just been looking for something else. And I mean, to answer your rhetorical question, it's like, I feel like the conversation and healing around the feminine has been so powerful for me to like be more receptive and to trust what's coming through.
I'm glad you mentioned that. The energy is definitely, and I think it comes through sometimes in astrology as well, because like certain planets or placements are traditionally masculine or feminine energy. And
and I have a ton of masculine energy in my chart, like barely any feminine.
Just a little
energy.
Capricorn,
little Cappy energy. That's actually ironically feminine, but it's like really not. Yeah, it's
in my brain,
it's an Earth I know it seems so masculine,
Wow.
but it's interesting because Capricorn is earth and earth is a feminine polarity.
Wow.
In astrology.
Oh
I
my
know.
God.
But then I think about like my mom is a Capricorn and
Yeah.
she modeled masculine energy to me. And I have a Capricorn rising, and a lot of Capricorn women I know, like maybe when they feel safe, they'll let go more on that feminine. But you know, Capricorn's about control. So it's a little tough to be in your feminine if you want to control everything.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Do you want to do a bit of
Yeah, I'm so down to give it a
mediumship?
whirl.
Okay.
Yeah, I always like to say, you know, I'm practicing. So
Yeah.
I'll ground in a little bit and
Okay.
just see if I can bring through a few things.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to give it a go?
Let's do
Okay,
it.
can I use the pen and the
Absolutely.
paper? Okay, perfect. I love these cards, by the way.
Thank you.
Such a vibe. Okay, so let's do this, babe. Let's go ahead. Both our feet are on the floor. Uncross your legs if you can. Close your eyes if that feels okay for you. And then let's just envision a grounding cord of energy from the base of the body running all the way down the legs, down the feet, and just send that line of grounding energy all the way to the center of earth. And just feel connected to the earth plane. Feel centered, feel protected, feel grounded. Feel in abundance. Just connect to this frequency for just a moment. Grounding the body. And then let's take a deep breath in. Deep breath out. And then visualize this protective, abundant, loving energy coming up from Mother Earth, center of Earth, up that grounding cord, up the legs, and then visualize it just moving around your aura, feeling protected, feeling guided, feeling peaceful and clear. Move it all around you, all around me, while we still remain sovereign in our own energy. And then let's go ahead and take one more deep breath in. Deep breath out. Okay, babe. So you're welcome to open your eyes whenever you're ready. I'm just going to continue to ground in, and then let me see if I can bring anything through.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, babes, let's see if we can place any of this.
Okay.
And I always tell my babes, like, you know, I'm practicing. So
Yes.
this is like, I've learned a lot and I still get a little performance anxiety
I
too, just because it's really
understand.
learning to trust and be okay being wrong, which my Capricorn rising doesn't like at all. So mediumship's been humbling for me just to like explore this and just continue to, you know, be of service through it. But something I always like to say, so what I'll do is, I'll go ahead and share like what I've written down and I'll see if any other impressions come through. But number one, like I never need to be right. If you're searching for something to make sense too much, just go ahead and shelf it. Either I misunderstood or it's something that needs to be confirmed by a family member. But what I always like to say is I do my best to be a clear communicator for the other side, a good listener, and then a clear communicator to you. But it's much like charades. So when I present like what I've written down, I'll give you like a couple options just to see if anything can land. To begin, just give me yes or no answers. If something's landing, I'll prompt you for more information. Okay. Let me also see. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, here's what I'm going to ask first. I do not remember where you're from, which is good.
Okay.
But like, was water or lake or like doing something as kids, was this a thing for you when you were younger?
Yeah, well, I'm from Minnesota.
Okay.
The land of 10,000 lakes.
There we go. So like, was that a part of your childhood, like lakes or like water activities, if this makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a family cabin on a lake.
There we go. Because I feel like someone is showing me, and I'm see if we can place who this is. I did write down a B, but you also did tell me your grandpa's name. So let's just call that out. But I did write down B. And also when I listen, there's a whole other side of my brain working. So if I was going to hear, while I heard the B, I would have gone over here into my left brain and be like, well, Ava said Bob, but instead I just wrote down B.
Yeah.
So, but I like to call that forward because you did say that to me before.
That was my
and I go,
telling you everything.
Like, don't tell me anything, okay? But yeah, I did write down like Water Lake kids, like core memories. Would there have been, and again, this can just be a yes or no, but would there have been a grandparent that would have been a part of that, or someone who has departed who would have maybe been part of those memories?
Yeah.
Okay. This is going to sound funny, but I did write down brown hair. And then, of course, I wrote down the B. So I don't know if Bob or a grandmother had like brown hair. It almost looks like a little bouffant-y to me, but kind of like older people hair.
Yeah.
But it feels brown or dyed brown.
Okay. Well, both my grandmothers dyed their hair brown.
Both of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go with that for a moment. Okay. And then I did write down grandmother and I wrote down heart related. So would that make sense for either departures? If there was something heart, chest, I don't know if it's heart attack. I don't know if it's something lung related, but I definitely felt more pressure in the chest.
Yes. I do this thing where like I don't remember how my grandparents passed.
Okay,
it's
that's
really
totally fine.
But I'm like, probably.
Okay. Is there any one specific grandparent that would make sense with what I'm speaking about here?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
And I already asked you if your mom's mom is departed, and she is not. She's just older. Okay. And then I did write down sign and bird. So has there been signs around birds specifically?
Cardinals.
Okay, yes. Amazing. Okay, so how about you go ahead and tell us who this person is?
Yeah, I think this is my grandfather, Robert or Bob.
Okay.
And I do feel like he shows up for me quite often. And to our point earlier, sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Yes. It's usually when we say that it's always them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the cardinal and then the memories at the lake. So this all would be associated with Bob.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, let me see if I can bring anything else through. Okay. And just a yes or no is fine for now, but do you know the age that Bob passed?
No.
Okay.
Roughly, but.
Okay. Would 70s make sense for him? Because I just wrote down 70, like that era.
My dad's parents passed earlier in their 70s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Bob, that wouldn't make sense for Bob.
Right.
Okay. Let me see if I can bring through anything else here. Okay, this is a weird one. Sometimes what they will do too is they'll bring something forward in our present life to also affirm or confirm their presence. I don't know why the heck I'm writing this down, but so let's see if we can decipher this together. But I wrote down white wall. So I don't know if like white wall, it's almost like when I'm seeing it in my mind's eye, it feels like an expanse. It feels like paint. Like I really can't really totally tell what this is, but it feels just like, I don't know if this is, we'll see if we can place it. And if not, you can see if something comes up.
Wow. No, I can't place that right now.
Okay. That's totally fine. Yeah. Let's leave that there.
Okay.
You want me to see if I can bring anything else through?
Can we ask a question?
You can. And then what I do when you do that is, again, I'll just go in and see if I can receive impressions. And then if we can like place the impression.
Okay. So both my grandfathers were named Bob.
Really?
And so now I'm curious about, it might be the other one.
Okay.
Because
The 70s?
His wife, yes.
Okay.
And
his wife had the bouffant hair. Got it. And they will do that sometimes where they'll come through like almost like in tandem and kind of toggle.
Okay.
So that can happen too.
Okay.
And I'm so, even though I've been practicing now for a bit, I'm still learning how to I usually ask them to come in one at a time.
Okay.
And they're like, we got to get our airtime.
They're like, right now or never.
Literally. Okay, that's interesting because it does sound like we're kind of bringing through a couple. It feels as if most of this is tracking, but it's almost like it's multiple sort of family members, and they will do that just to be like, oh, Ava, we got this opportunity. We're going to bring some things through.
It literally feels like both of them, which is interesting.
I love they're both named Bob.
Yeah.
I love it. That's so great. Okay, and what's the question?
The question I had was just to clarify which grandfather, or maybe it is both. But.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I mean, the water, lake, and kids, like that memory, was there one of those grandfathers you experienced that memory with more? Was it dad's side?
That would be my mom's side.
Your mom's side?
Yeah.
Okay, so sometimes this will happen too, where like how I write things down. So I wrote your mom up here. You don't know how they passed away, so it's a little hard to affirm the heart related. So maybe you can see if that makes sense for any of the grandfathers or grandmothers, heart related, chest related. But I did write down mom up here. So there's definitely some kind of association with mom. So, and what about the cardinal? Does that feel more like dad? Does that feel more like mom's side?
That feels more like mom's side.
Okay. So this feels like Grandpa Bob, mom's side, coming through very strong. But then the bouffanty hair, the 70s, that might also be other Grandpa Bob just bringing in a few things just to be like, I'm here too.
Which that would be like a new realization for me.
Really?
Yeah.
In what way?
I guess I didn't know that they were around.
Yeah, they always are. They always are. And that's the beauty of this practice is, we sometimes will have the people we want to come through, we think will come through. But what's amazing is like what we need will come through, who we need. And a lot of times too, like the ancestors and our bloodlines, like when they have an opportunity, like they will make themselves known, because it's like not that you can't call to them or speak to them. Sometimes we forget. And so that's also another beautiful thing I've seen in quite a few of my readings where people will be like, oh, I want to talk to so-and-so, and we can definitely bring that person through. But a lot of times there will be messages from a soul, whether it's a friend or a loved one. Sometimes a few times I've had people have someone come through who's like from their young life who passed away, and like they're like, wait, who is this? And then they'll place it and they'll be like, oh my God, I haven't thought about this person in 25 years. So it's almost like souls also, they come through in whatever they feel will be most healing for you. Especially with mediumship. It's like it is for the sake of healing. So yeah, how are you feeling?
I feel good. I feel like I just learned my team is expanded.
Your team is expanded. And and as soon as I went in, I was just like, whomever, loves Ava and just like would like to, bring in a few things that feel like she could easily confirm. It's beautiful, beautiful. Maybe you can affirm the heart related thing for me. Obviously that's also, a typical way to pass, but a lot of times like they will bring me through like a passing. And that's one way that souls really bring through evidence is like to actually speak to how they died.
Oh, okay.
That's a big thing too. So.
Okay. So that's good information for me to brush up on.
Yeah, let me know. Yeah. You can text me. I'm used to these texts.
I will.
I've had lots of like friends who will be like, okay, so remember the thing you told me? Well, my mom told me. And it just like, it really brings like such a warmth to my life because it's like, oh wow, we really don't die. God, it's incredible.
Yeah. I'm going to be thinking about the white wall, and I'm going to be thinking
oh my God. And I'll tell you what I'm seeing when I'm like tapping in. It's really interesting because like sometimes like when they bring through colors, there can be significance with colors. But when I wrote it down, it was more like a wall. It's like an expanse of something. We'll see if we can place that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little bit hard. I remember I just did a session recently and I was like, why am I seeing orange? And it was like orange was this person's absolute favorite color. So it's like they'll kind of just bring through these signs and symbols and things that, the sitter will either know or will have in their immediate experience that they could confirm. So we'll see. Let me know.
You.
Thank you. That was so nice.
It was. I really appreciate it. And
it's my honor.
And for being game to do it live on air.
This was, I'm sweating. My armpits are sweating. Like, just because, it's like, and that's also why I practice. And I've just been practicing for free now for like a little while because I love to not have the pressure because it's also such a sacred and sensitive thing because when you're sitting with someone and you have someone there for a session, practice or paid, you're dealing with deeply sensitive subject matter. And there's often always grief involved when you're sitting with someone who wants to hear from someone on the other side. So it's, something that I don't take lightly at all. And I really am just wanting to continue to get better and better at. So, you can have the gift of knowing that there's more,
Yeah.
And I love the podcast called More Podcast because that's why I always say that there's more,
I'm like, more is more is more is more.
More is more.
And it also stands for manifesting original rich bitch experiences.
Babe, that's my whole world these days.
You're in the right spot.
I love it so much. My grandmother would be very game. It was just her birthday the other day.
Happy birthday to her.
Babes. I love it.
Yeah, all the grandparents.
Oh, they love it. They're like, you guys are doing great. 2 thumbs up. We're really proud of what you're up to.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it feels so good.
Thank you for tapping in. I appreciate
it. It's my privilege. Thanks, Boo.
Of course. I wanted to wrap with, we've kind of talked a little bit about different signs or maybe like signals or messages and ways that we can start to get messages or communicate with our team. I'm curious about, mediumship sessions like this, obviously a great way to do that. What are some other things that we can look for, whether it be signs, symbols, putting out those asks? Like, how could we really start to cultivate this practice of receiving messages, for lack of better term?
Yeah. Well, I think something I definitely want to reiterate is meditating. Like even, I just started to do something recently because going through a lot of life changes in the last couple of months, I just totally got off my meditation game. I just had tons of changes going on. And I will say in the last 2 weeks, I just started meditating every morning the second I wake up. So it's literally and anyone can do this. It's wake up and instead of grabbing your phone and scrolling, grab Insight Timer and just put on a timer for 5 to 10 minutes and meditate and just breathe. And even if you think the whole time and it's annoying, that's okay. That's the practice is you get better and better the more that you do it. But I would say, the reason why it's so challenging oftentimes to hear and to receive signs is because we are so distracted and we are also in our stress, our stress brain, our amygdala, our nervous systems get stressed out from, all the things of modern life. So when you can meditate and just make a practice of meditation, it actually does help raise your frequency. And frequency raising is actually what helps you receive more signs and symbols because you're aware and awake to them. So it's not that they're not there for you all the time. And it's not that, your team and loved ones who are departed aren't there to communicate with you. It's just so often we're just distracted. It's we have our focus on some sort of shiny object as opposed to this beautiful plethora of magic that's if we just turn to the right, it would be right there. So that's kind of one way to think about it is if I meditate and I can also soften my frequency a little bit or raise my frequency a little bit, I can actually start to recognize these signs and symbols when they are around me. And then also I mentioned, asking, actually verbally asking and being I want a sign. Can you send me a sign? And even ask, so one thing in mediumship, like what I just did with you is like, I just wait for impressions and I write them down. And this is something you can do. You know, you can ground yourself in meditation, maybe set a timer for like 15 minutes if you'd like, and get a notebook and maybe have a question at the top and just be like, what's my purpose? Or like, why am I here? Or what should I do about my job? And instead of letting your left brain and your frontal lobe answer, meditate and ask your guides in your mind or out loud and just say, can you give me some messages or symbols or something to help me get some clarity around this thing? You will be amazed. Maybe the first couple times you do it, maybe you won't get tons of stuff, but if you practice and you actually start to facilitate this relationship, you will be blown away at the messages that you receive. And, you know, you just have to know you're safe. You know, you do it in a safe, clear space that feels good to you. I'm a huge fan of having an altar. So lately I just meditate in bed or I meditate with my red light. But I have an altar in my office. And when I want to sit down and practice or do my spiritual practice, I will always sit at my altar, which is essentially just creating an intentional space for yourself where you commune. And it's also really nice in like modern life with how busy it is and how digitally distracted we all are. Yeah. It's nice to have a space where you can just be with your journaling or be with music and meditation or visualize or work with your crystals or talk to yourself. It's just like, just to create a space where you're starting to just spiritually attune a bit more. You know, you'll be amazed. And the more that you practice, there's actually a great book. I never finished reading it, but it's called Spirit Beside Us. And I don't remember the author, but this is a person who talk about, holy crap, developing your mediumship abilities through meditation. The experiences this man started having just from becoming an avid meditator, I'm like, I want these. I'm like, what sign is this guy? Like, I just would read about his journeys and I was like, these are incredible. But we really cannot, you know, downplay the power of meditation. It's really a huge tool for us, especially if you want to have more, you know, experiences that kind of blow your mind. Makes you more available.
Yep. Okay. Meditation.
Meditate.
Why does everything come back to meditating?
Dude, I know. It's Believe me, when all the mediumship courses and like teachers I was studying are just talking about meditation, I was like, can it be something else? But it's just so good. Like I just notice when I meditate, it just improves my life unbelievably. It makes me a lot more magnetic as well. Yeah. So it's worth doing. Yeah. Especially if you like to manifest or all the different things. It's just like meditation's great for so many things.
Gotta get back on the cycle.
I just got reminded recently too. So I'm just here to share the good word.
I love it. Thanks. We won't shoot the messenger.
Yeah, please don't. Please don't. I come in peace.
As we conclude today, is there anything else that you would like to offer up, whether it be words of wisdom, opportunities to work with you?
Oh, thanks,
anything?
Angel.
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, a big message that I have, and really this has just been a big part of like my life experience recently. It's like, if you're in a rough moment or a rough season, I think just knowing, and again, don't shoot the messenger when I say this, but know that it's there to serve you. Like everything that challenges you is not there to take you down or ruin you. It's actually there to remind yourself that essentially, like, you just have an opportunity to step into your potential. Like, I always like to say, like, we all have worthy nemesis throughout our lives. Sometimes they're people, sometimes they're experiences, sometimes they're bad habits, but everything that challenges you is actually there to help you rise into your peace, your power, and your potential, and essentially support you in experiencing more fulfillment. So, you know, if you're going through it, just keep going. And I'm just wishing, you know, anyone that's hearing this, just a lot of love and like peace and just to know themselves, truly know themselves. So yeah, I'm super active on Instagram at Natalia_Benson. If I'm ever teaching or I have free offerings, I always announce them there into my email list. And then if you'd like to learn a little bit more about my work or my membership, you can just go to nataliabenson.com.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you,
I'll
babes.
link all the things in the show notes,
Yes,
of
this
course.
is the best. I love
Honestly,
this.
thank you so much. This
was
has
a
been
gift.
such a gift
Thank
and
you.
really full circle moment.
I know.
Yay.
I'm so proud of you. This is just stunning. And thank you for just such like an incredible conversation. I loved this.
Thank you. I loved it too.
Babes. Love you.
Listen to the More Pod every Wednesday as I share the things that make me more me and discover a thing or two to make you more you.